Join Lizzie Rose, Tahil, Gesyuk, and Gabriel Llhewellyn-Ari as they come together to enlighten all sexual identities and shift the partnership paradigm. Welcome to Revolutionary Romance.
Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Revolutionary Romance. I am here with two wonderful people. First of all, my name is Gabriel Llhewellyn-Ari, and I'm so excited to be bringing you this show today. We've got a powerful hour for you to connect with your own inner wisdom and also get some new perspectives on intimate relationships. It's our mission to be a bridge and to be a lighthouse of awareness on this particular topic, which so many of us seem to not really fully understand. And so it's my great joy and my great pleasure to introduce my two co-hosts for this show. We have a phenomenal relationship coach by the name of Tahil Gesyuk. Tahil Gesyuk. And he has led workshops, he does intimacy circles. Not only is he a powerful and profound coach, he's also a dear friend of mine. And so he's going to be telling you all about his glorious self in just a moment. But first I just want to tell you that we also have my dear, dear, dear friend with us today. Her name is Lizzie Rose. And she is a very gifted, intuitive, and is going to be providing a different perspective for us here on the show. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to turn the mic over to Tahil, and he's going to tell you a little bit about himself, and then we're going to go to Lizzie, and then finally me. So Tahil, here you are. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Gabe. I appreciate that. So, who am I? Good question. I have no idea. Actually, ever since I was a kid, I was kind of a jack of all trades around holistic health. I went to massage school when I was in 8th grade. I had a massage career by the time I was 17. That led me into yoga, into Tai Chi. My father was a martial art master. He taught a style called Kambayeta. He put me into martial arts when I was 11 years old. I had many different martial arts styles that I explored. I had so much background in holistic health and oriental studies. Eventually, it led me to become a yoga instructor, create a whole bunch of yoga studios, and from that, it led me into the world of coaching. I first became a coach as a health counselor, so I taught people around food and health. And then from there, I blossomed into life coaching, career coaching, and now eventually into a relationship coach, an intimacy coach. Because I realized that at the heart of everything that I've ever studied, it was always about the relationship with whatever it is that was going on. And I didn't realize this at the time, but I was always fascinated with the art of intimacy, where vulnerability meets vulnerability. And so I developed these things called intimacy labs, and I've been running them for over 20 years. And a lot of the advice that I give my clients and the technology I develop came out of those intimacy labs. And I'm a very result-oriented coach, so what I saw actually working at those intimacy labs, I quickly reverse engineered, set it up, and created it into a package and presented to people. But the thing that I get most juiced up about and most excited about is when I learn something new, and when I have an opportunity to share something that I've learned that inspires someone else to have an aha moment. So I can't wait to discover what we discover as a triad here. So, yeah.
I just want to say quick that I've been to some of your events and your workshops, and the one that I attended was so profoundly life shifting for me. I remember me and a friend went, and afterwards we felt such a deep connection with our own truth and with life in general. I remember we went out to eat that evening, and we were looking at all these people and having these same epiphanies of how beautiful everything was, and which to me is a very real testament to the power of your work and to the amount of heart that is in your work and healing. So that's a big part of why I invited you to come on this show, was because I really wanted to share with other people what I had experienced, and I also thought you were really knowledgeable as well, and so I just wanted to share that quickly, and so thank you for being on this show with us today. Yeah, you're welcome. And so now we're actually going to hear from another co-host that we have. Yes, we have three hosts for this show. Her name is Lizzie Rose, and she's going to tell you a little bit about herself and what she's bringing to the table with our show. So, Lizzie, tell us about yourself.
Thanks, Gabe. I'm really excited to be here today. I think the biggest contribution I'll be making to this show is that I am a woman, and so I also happen to be a gay woman. So I'll be standing in for all those queer women out there and giving my perspective. A little about me individually is that I've always been really into connecting with people in a very authentic way. And as far as putting on masks or facades or social roles, a lot of that stuff just has never made a lot of sense to me. It kind of has always seemed like I'm making this life up as I go along, just like we all are. And I've also always been very sensitive to energy and to just to being very intuitive and just to the finer emotions and communications that are happening around me. So that's a big part of my life. Right now I'm finishing up training in massage, and I've also had training in psychic training at the Berkeley Psychic Institute. I'm originally over from the East Coast, New York, and also New Hampshire, which is where my family lives right now. And I completed 4 years of college in anthropology and sociology out there. So pretty much dealing with people, traveling, all of those things have always been big interests of mine, and I'll be bringing a lot of my experiences to the table here. Relationships have always been very big for me as well, and right when I was fairly young, just 17, I had a very, very deep and intimate relationship with another woman that really caused me to go deeper into myself and to explore myself on a spiritual level because of all that I went through to come out of that relationship. So, yes, I have much to share with you guys, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Lizzie. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so glad that you're both here. You know, I just wanted to say that I have known you for how long, and I never knew you went to college. And here, I never knew that you went to college. So that I'm learning right along with you, listening right now. Yes, I, as many of you know, my name is Gabriel Llhewellyn-Ari, and I am the creator of Realms Radio, and I also have my own personal intuitive business. And for me, the reason that I feel so compelled to do this show is that in my personal life, I've felt like I have grown leaps and bounds in prosperity and health, in my life's purpose and creativity, and consistently for the last 10 years or so, I haven't put really any attention on intimate relationships, and how they have showed up in my life is very interesting to me. the majority of the relationships that have come into my own personal sphere, they've been very unfulfilling and not something that I feel like I'm consciously creating. And so my personal intention for this show is that I am aiming to be an example. I'm aiming to be someone who gets assignments and goes out and does the work and reports back, having this show to keep me accountable, to share with you my personal story and also my growth, my successes, and my failures, in the hopes that you take the information that I present, that I'm going through in my own personal life, and apply it to your own life, so that you can start to blossom and emerge in a beautiful and loving way in this area of your life. And so I'm very excited. I'm a little nervous because I know that I'm going to be tested and I'm going to be pushed. But at the same time, that's what I need right now. I need a kick in the pants, so to speak, because I've been avoiding this area for a long time. So yes, I'm really excited, and I'm very much looking forward to what we're all going to be creating together. Not just us as co-hosts here, but also you listening at home right now. Oh, okay. So Tahil would like to say something.
Thanks. So one of the reasons why we all got together was that there's me being a coach and a facilitator around intimacy and connection. I know both Gabe and Lizzie are interested in creating more intimacy in their life, and they wanted to learn more technologies around dating, around connection, around deepening connection, and having that intimate community in their life that they're craving for. And so we're all collaborating together because we're all curious about learning from one another. You know, there's a lot around the queer culture that I have a lot to learn about. So I'm really looking forward to learning. And what I'm discovering as we had informal conversations is that there's a lot lacking around actually dating, in particular dating around the sacred community. With if you have values around spirituality, if you have values around the sacred, this is one of the things that was brought up by Gabe and by Lizzie about what they're looking for, and they had a harder time finding that in the circles that they were in. So I'm really curious about what we all find in that when we put all our heads together.
Beautiful. Thanks, Tahil. And I'd like to actually turn it over to Lizzie and see what she has to say about what we just said here. So, Lizzie?
Hi. Yes, I'm really excited to go deeper with my dating life right now. It's, in a lot of ways, my dating life the last couple of years has been pretty much non-existent. I was talking with Tahil the other day about this, and was kind of just talking about how often in my life how relationships or flings would start it would just kind of happen. I would just sort of walk right into it. And now I'm at a point where I'm really wanting to consciously have certain experiences and consciously bring more romance into my life. And I'm also in a space of exploring more of who I am and how I'd like to be in relationship and how I'd like to show up as far as the balance between my masculine and feminine energy. That's something that is kind of a hot topic for me. In some ways, I think I come off as androgynous, and I've often fluctuated between just how I see myself. So that's going to be a big topic of exploration, and I'm excited to go on this journey.
I just want to say that dating is a lost art in our culture. I was a relationship coach for over a decade. I became a dating expert because what I found after I interviewed many couples being in relationship is that when I asked them, how did I get there, they had absolutely no idea. Many of them said, it just happened. And it started to dawn on me that dating is a lost art. And when people are dating, it feels like nails on a chalkboard. It's something that they usually hate doing until they actually get into a relationship. And I realized that there's so much missing out there. And I think if people just simply date well, the relationships that they will have are going to be a lot more satisfying and a lot more nourishing. And this is one of the reasons why in our format we have dating tips every time we have a show, so that people can become more masterful around dating and connection in the first place.
Oh, thank you both. Thank you both. Yes, and myself, I forgot to mention the last time that I had the mic is that I am representing gay men because I'm a gay man and I have had issues with relationships. So this is we're bringing together all of the different possibilities that someone could have in a relationship. We have Tahil, the straight man, we have Lizzie, the queer woman, and me, the queer guy. And we're coming together to bridge those gaps and to give anyone who's listening not only a new perspective, but profound ideas and ways that they can improve their own love life. With my own experience with dating and intimate relationships among gay men, it's been a challenge for me because I'm a very spiritual person, and that's something that I would like to have in a partner. And one of the challenges that I have faced in the dating world, in gay culture, is that there seems to be a lack of that, or rather, there is so much wounding that I've experienced in the men that I've dated that they can't and don't fully show up. And it honestly breaks my heart sometimes knowing that they have so much stuff, they have so much baggage that even though I think they're great, I'm not attracted to them. I'm not attracted to them as a partner. And one of the other things one of the other challenges that I have faced being a queer person, which, by the way, queer, when we say queer, we just, well, I mean I mean that I don't put labels on my sexuality. Would you say the same, Lizzie? Okay, she agrees. So that's what we mean when we say queer, is that we're not putting labels on it. And what I have, another obstacle that I have found for myself, and I can possibly speak for Lizzie in this too, in the queer culture, is that it's just difficult to meet people. It's almost like once in a blue moon when I will find someone who's A, interested in me, B, I'm attracted to them, and C, we've got a connection. It's like when all of those things actually match up, there's a part of me that doesn't believe it because it doesn't happen very often. And of course I could go out to dance clubs and I could go out to nightclubs and I could go to the bars where so many other queer people meet, but I am not in that scene, and so many of my friends agree with that. They don't want to go out to bars. They don't want to meet people while they're drunk. They want to be meeting spiritual people. They're craving that connection, and I've also felt that, well, not felt, I've also feel for myself, I guess you could say, is that I have encountered so much homophobia in the queer culture, about the queer culture, which is bizarre when you think about it, that there are so many men that I have personally dated that don't feel comfortable holding my hand in public, and that doesn't work for me. That just doesn't work for me. I need to know that the person I'm dating is comfortable with their sexuality enough that they can hold my hand in public. They can even kiss me in public. And that's something I'm committed to. That's a deal breaker of mine. You've got to be okay with that. Otherwise it's just not going to work. I'm going to get too triggered and that won't work for me. So those are just some of the challenges being a gay man that I have encountered, which I think to some extent some of those challenges can also filter into other different kinds of relationships, both straight and with gay women. And I've also noticed that the homophobia is particularly pronounced amongst gay men, and or just men in general, actually. And because I believe that that's because that men are taught from a very early age in this country that it is not safe to feel. It's not okay for them to have emotions, and which is in my personal opinion ridiculous, because they're human beings and they feel. And so that's part of the reason why I was really attracted to Tahil, our coach with us here today, is that he's really committed to that, not only as a being showing up in the world that way, but also helping other men and anyone who wants help with that to see that and to be that. Yes, and
yeah, I just want to say I also noticed this, and one of the biggest locks that I found in men is that homophobic fear, and I think men can't learn intimacy with other men until they break that block. And what I found incredibly surprising, that in the gay culture, it also is there. So it led me to believe that the patriarchal culture actually set it up as a way of men policing other men from actually connecting and getting more vulnerable and intimate with one another. Regardless of whether you're a straight man or a gay man, it's one of the places that we can all bridge as brothers. And eventually see one another and develop bridges of empathy and compassion with one another, so that we can actually break through these lockdowns that we all have as human beings. The more we understand each other's differences and celebrate them together, the more of an understanding we'll have as human beings, looking eye to eye, feeling each other belly to belly. So I'm really glad you brought that up. When I talk to straight men, they're all shocked. It's like a foreign land. When they look at gay men, they have no idea that they also have homophobia, and they're going through their own struggles. That we're actually all in it together as men, because we've been conditioned in a culture, in a country that's not only emotionally stifling us, but also stifling us as human beings, because simply we have a penis. That's horrible. It's just horrible. And women have their own challenges, and I'd love, when we get to that, to actually hear from the only woman in the room to hear that. But I know as a man, I had to go through a lot in me, and to reclaim the simple, human, dignified right to be affectionate with other men in my life, and to celebrate the fact that I can find another man illuminating, fascinating, and attractive. Being a straight guy, to find another man attractive took me years of work and my inner own dialogue. I had to own the fact that, hey, I'm straight, but I love this man, and there's something about them that actually makes me feel attracted to them. And I'd love to get deeper in that later in other shows about understanding the difference between the two.
I just wanted to say really quick that I also believe, not only for myself, but really any man who's listening, that this can be a very profound healing experience for you. When I can heal and fully own not only my fears, but also start accepting love, like Tahil was talking about, and being in connection with other men, it helps to free me up so that I can show up in my life more fully and more complete. So if you are listening and you're a man, or if you have a husband or a boyfriend, this is something that in our culture is very, very, very much looked down upon, and I believe ultimately can lead to profound healing by simply connecting with other men.
it seems to be the elephant in the room that we're all kind of calling out if we're going to be talking about the subject. We're all have to talk about that elephant in the room to release the tension. And by the way, this is the first precursor to intimacy. Intimacy is not safe. It does not feel secure. There's always an element of danger in intimacy. It allows you to be exposed. And the quickest, fastest way that we can start creating talk around intimacy in the queer culture means getting out and talking about what it feels like to come out. And the truth is that the queer culture is not the only place where coming out actually happens. I feel like I've had many moments of wanting to come out and actually going through the same being an outcast, coming out in the realm of the fact that I was in an alternative culture around holistic health, around spirituality. I would be constantly made fun of when I was talking about meditation, health food, being a spiritual being, talking about alternative experiences. There's so much to be coming out of that, because this is not a culture that readily accepts that or honors that. This is not only a culture that doesn't honor emotions, it also doesn't necessarily always honor spirituality. I can't tell you how often I've heard people talk about things that I said were spiritual were actually woo-woo or some kind of strange stuff. I learned how to hide at a very early age simply because I was seeing things that I learned that I can't share it with everybody. So I had to learn how to censor what I shared. And I learned a lot about what psychologists called mind mapping, where you literally learn how to read other people's facial gestures or reactions to see if they're actually hearing you or able to hear you. There's a lot of testing that I've learned to develop. I'm guessing it's very similar in the queer culture, that there's a lot of testing that you developed to see if it's safe enough to reveal, right? So I think this is leading us to a topic that I think should be talked about,
And that's exactly why we're here. We're here to have a conversation about intimacy amongst the three different genders, so to speak, and cultures. Yes, I guess I like to think of it. I like to think of it as gender for some reason. I don't know what that is about for me, but yeah, that could be one of the things we talk about. Tahil is saying. But moving on, we're really excited to bring you a dating tip of the week that Tahil has put together, and he is going to share that with you right now. So Tahil, if you would tell us, what is our dating tip of the week this week?
Okay, so again, a lot of the tips that I have came out of an intimacy lab that I've been having for the last 20 years, basically gathering people together and doing various experiments to see what works and what doesn't work. And what we found around dating and intimacy is before you actually have a date, you actually have to meet someone to think of how to go on a date. And 96% of the people that come to me either have basically three pillars of concern. It's either how to get connected, how to deepen connection, or how to figure out that dance, should I stay or should I go? And in the connection, before you have a date, you have to actually meet someone to be on a date, right? And in that, I developed a technology called the intimacy dance. And the intimacy dance is a wonderful technology. Most of us unconsciously are enticing people with an intimacy dance, or other people are enticing us to dance with them in an intimacy dance, but we completely miss it because this is a culture that is numbed out from a function of intimately connecting with other people. So when somebody asks you about the weather, they're not just asking you about the weather. There's usually if somebody starts a conversation with you, it's usually and it ends with a question. What they're doing is they're inviting you to an intimacy dance. So a scenario would be, wow, isn't that an amazing day today? When that person asks you that, what they're doing is that they're inviting you to a dance. And if you don't want to dance, you usually say something short and concise, and there's contractive cues in that. So, somebody would say, yep, they're not inviting you, they're not initiating a dance, they're basically saying, no thank you, I don't want to dance. But if somebody's saying to you, isn't this a great day today, isn't the weather great? You have an opportunity to reveal something about yourself when you're answering their question. So you might say, yeah, the weather's great, it's so sunny outside, and I feel like I'm a solar bunny. Like whenever I see the sun, I get energized. Right? So what you've just done is you've just given a little snippet of something vulnerable about you, and you shared something about you. And now you gave the ball back to that person that initiated the question. And now it's their opportunity, if they want to keep dancing with you, to share something a little bit about themselves. And they might say something like, wow, I'm a solar bunny too. Like I get energized when it's a sunny day, and I definitely feel a lot more down when it's raining. So now that they've shared something about themselves, and before you know it, you're in an intimacy dance, where each time you can up the stakes of what you reveal about who you are. In this intimacy dance, there eventually comes a point where you peak into a silent, pregnant pause. In that pregnant pause, the first one that breaks the silence of that pause is the initiator of taking a deep breath and taking a gulp and asking for the other person's number, information, or contact to see if they're going to continue this connection that was just made. And then the other person has to take a deep breath and a gulp to see if they want to take on the invitation that was just had. That process is the process that takes complete strangers that inevitably gets people in touch in a connection of a date. This happens all the time, but nobody's ever explained it this way. Nobody's ever taught anybody this way. And so that's why I developed technology of the intimacy dance. Just become aware of how people connect with you, how people invite you in to that intimacy dance. Become conscious of it, and all of a sudden, you'll have a lot more intimacy in your life than you ever thought possible. This should be taught in grade school. I don't know why nobody's teaching this stuff.
Wow, I just had a major epiphany. I realized, I think from an early age, to always do that, to have small talk with people. And I've met a lot of different people who say, I don't like small talk. I don't do small talk. And my epiphany was, wow. And first of all, I will say that there are also times where I don't want to have small talk. And what I realized about myself is that I'm actually shutting down being intimate with other people, and I'm telling myself, well, I don't want to have small talk with them as a ruse, and not really even wanting to engage whatsoever. And so I think it was really powerful for me to hear you share that truth, that yes, we need to talk about the weather. We need to have some sort of banter going on back and forth about stuff that probably doesn't really matter, but it's a way for us to feel comfortable with each other and get to feel each other out, and to not really think about too much what we're saying.
What ends up happening once you get really good at understanding this intimacy dance is like the whole world becomes an adventure, like a treasure chest. Because each person you meet, you just really don't know what you're going to find. That initial conversation about the weather might lead you to your next husband, or to the next amazing connection that you've never thought possible, simply because you engaged in the dance. And what you're looking for in an authentic way, right, which is what I teach people as a practice in my connection circles, is, well, do I like this banter? Does it feel comfortable for me to reveal myself with this person? And how well are they revealing themselves? And that intimate contact, you get to say, you know what, there's enough communion here between the both of us to initiate a date, to accept a date, or to request a date, which, by the way, is a whole different topic of conversation about who initiates and who receives. And you might be surprised that with some people, you want to initiate. With other people, you want to receive. And by the way, this allows you to experiment with a whole different dynamic that will build over time in relationship. Are you the active or the receiving role that builds that connection?
Thank you. That was great. So I would actually love to hear what Lizzie has to think about all this. So Lizzie, what's going on in the head of yours?
Well, a lot of this just really resonates. I'm just thinking back over times in my life when I used this intimacy dance just to have conversations with all kinds of different people, whether I was romantically interested or not. And it's I liked what I think actually Gabe said about just a way of just it being a way of just feeling into the energy of the person and of kind of do I like this person or not? I think Tahil said kind of just does this jive with me? Do I feel comfortable expressing myself with this person? I never thought of how those opening words and questions can be, just a way of feeling things out. I never thought of it in those words, and that just really resonated with me a lot. Yeah, I'm really just enjoying this conversation.
Yes, and we hope you are too. So now I'm really excited to tell you all that we are going into our topic of the week, our very first topic here on the show, which appropriately sanctioned is intimacy, because how can we have an intimate partnership if we don't have intimacy? And so I'm really excited to be hearing what Tahil and Lizzie have to say about that. But first, I want to turn it over to Tahil, and he's going to talk to us about intimacy and probably share some really enlightening, fascinating things. So Tahil?
Okay. So the first thing to understand about intimacy and connection is that there's intimacy with yourself, and there's intimacy with the world around you. And there's this harmonic note that hits between the two. That when you feel like everything is right with the world, and that you're in the right place at the right time, what you're feeling is that harmonic note between the intimacy of yourself and the intimacy that you relate with the world around you, regardless of the person that's in front of you. So I just want to say that from the get-go. The other thing is that intimacy is a space of vulnerability that meets vulnerability. And there's a basic tenet of technology that I developed for people's nervousness and fears that come up with intimacy. There are 3 pillars. The first one is desires, fears, and pacing. Really important to get, because the desires allow us to express our longings. Our fears allow us to set what we're nervous about, what our apprehensions are, and the pacing allows you to be a representative of both your fears and your desires when you meet someone, right? So it's a very powerful technology that when you learn how to get masterful at that, intimacy becomes much easier with the people around you. Because whenever you crash and burn in an intimate contact, usually it's because you haven't talked about your desires and longings, you haven't talked about your fears, and you haven't talked about the pacing that works for each one of you. Right? So that's the first pillar. The second one is just to own the sense of, well, I think we should just stay there, because that would be too many pillars. Just desires, fears, and pacing, I think, is a really important understanding around intimacy. So with yourself and with the world around you. So I'd love to get the conversation started with that.
Well, I think that's really profound, and I'm questioning within myself first of all, what is my pacing in relationship, and I actually would like to know what your definition of pacing is. Like, what does that mean? How would that look in a relationship or in a dating relationship?
Great. I'm really glad you asked that, because a lot of people talk about boundaries, to keep themselves safe and protected. Really, a boundary is something that is a deal breaker, right? A pacing allows the speed. So a lot of people lack the understanding of their own pacing. This is actually really common. There are some people that move much quicker than you do. And so when you talk about the different pacings that you have, then you can talk about how you can harmonize together. So we all fluctuate in how fast and how slow we want to go in the world around us. Sometimes we want to race like a racehorse. Sometimes we want to move like a turtle or a snail. And there are certain friends that I call because I want to hang out like a turtle. I want to go at a much slower pace. I'm chilling out today. My nerves are shot. I just want to chill out. There are times when I am like chop, chop, chop. I got to get things done. I want to go with somebody who's much faster because I'm firing on all cylinders, right? And the same thing holds true with many different parts of who we are in our heart and in our psyche. There are times when I want to, in the beginning, be more slow and cautious. There are times when I get in there, I want to go really quick and deep and fast, and then it's like a wave. It's like music. You reach different tempos with different people. Some people inspire me to be fast with them. Some people inspire me to be slow with them. So it's like really understanding, again, it's understanding the pacing with yourself, to yourself. It's understanding the pacing with someone else. It's the beat. It's the rhythm. The pacing is the rhythm. What is the rhythm of your life? Well, it's the pacing of your life. The more in harmony you are with yourself and the world around you, the more you can understand your own pacing. What are the calling cards of pacing? Is that you become more psychic, and you have a sense of what is to come. If you have a hard time seeing what is to come with someone, chances are you're out of sync and out of harmony with them and out of pacing with them.
So I have a question around that. Is let's say, for example, there is someone that I wanted to be in a relationship with, and I can tell that we're out of pacing. Is that something that I can change myself, or is that something like that's just unchangeable? That their pacing is this and my pacing is this. So we can't be together.
Yes. So it's an and both, not an either or. So the relationship with yourself, there are things about ourselves that are pretty set and pretty standard. When they asked this question to Yogananda, and they asked it in a different way, they said, Yogananda, how much of our life is predestined and how much of our life is our free will? Right? Yogananda took a deep breath and thought for a moment, meditated, and he came back and said this. He said about 75% of your life is predestined and about 25% is free will. Ever since I heard that question, I was working really hard on my free will so I can have more access to free will. So, look, when it comes to consciousness and unconsciousness, the things that are unconscious are predetermined about who we are. The more conscious you are, the more free will you have in that process. Right? So that's what it boils down to on a spiritual level. So this is why I'm so committed to creating consciousness within myself and the world around me, because I think we'll have more free will. The honesty is that, I look around me, if I'm really honest with myself, and I look around the world, most of us, we're mostly asleep. So I would say most of our actions are pretty unconscious. So I developed a technology which I call structuring for success. When I'm awake and I'm conscious, I try to create structures that, despite myself, I will do the better thing for who I am and the relations that I have in the world around me. But I would say Yogananda was pretty right on the money. Most of our thing is pretty much set. So it's like I call it knowing yourself. A lot of us get trapped by our longings and our hunger. So when it's not a right match, not a right rhythm, we still want it to be, and we end up going for it anyway. And then later on, we crash and burn. And really, it's up to you. Like a lot of us want to learn the hard way, or some of us want to. I'd rather work smarter rather than harder. So for people who want to work harder, they do the crash and burn method. They do a lot of trial and error. If you want to be work smarter about it, then I think that using this technology would really help out in that.
Hey, Tahil, it's funny that you said that you started to talk about how pacing has a lot to do with, well, you just said the more you get tuned into pacing, the more psychic you get, or something to that effect. And before you even said that, I started thinking about how, for me, having the right pacing, to be able to have good pacing in a relationship, I've had to really meditate and ground and get really clear with myself. And I've noticed the more I get to know my own inner pacing, the more I can have that with others. And the way that's shown up a lot for me is I think in the past I had a tendency to just always be sort of running ahead of myself, or setting high goals, or having a vision or something, and I sort of would lose myself trying to get myself to that. And that would come up in my relationships, where I think I would think the other person was going too slow for me or something, but really I wasn't united within myself, so I wasn't able to be present at all. And so yes, that what you said had a lot of relevance to me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing, Lizzie. And so I would actually like to talk, if we may, a little bit about the other two parts of intimacy that you'd mentioned. We have just a few minutes left to be talking about this, and so I'd love for our listeners to learn about those other two parts. So what are the other two parts of intimacy, Tahil?
Okay, so you've made that initial contact with an intimacy dance. You're on that first date. You're on the first or second date. In that dating process, there has to be some communication about your longings and your desires, and to be heard on both sides of the fence of that dating experience. And it's also important that you talk about your fears, because if you only talk about your desires and longings, then you're leaving a whole half of you out. Or if you only talk about your fears, you're leaving another half of you out. When a person has a complete picture of who you are, they're having an equal experience of your longings and desires along with your fears, so they can get a real understanding of who you are. A lot of people, when they're dating, they only show their best foot. Or the ones that are really bad at dating, they only show their worst foot. You know, either way, you're not really showing the other person who you really are, and they're not really getting to know the full you, right? So desires and fears allow you to see the whole person, and then once you see the whole person, then you can accurately determine the pacing that works for both of you. Sometimes that pacing means that, we're not really a good match. Sometimes it means, hey, you know what, you established a container of how you want to relate, like, oh, I think I want to be friends, or, oh, you know what, I'm interested in getting to know you more romantic way.
I have a question for you around how would you recommend sharing your fears with someone who is you're dating? Like, because that's not something that I personally have ever done. So how could I go about that? And how could we go about that?
Okay, great. Well, fears are an exciting part about intimacy. The quickest, fastest way to the root of intimacy is actually to be able to share your fears, right? The reason why this culture doesn't often share its fears is because of the mythos. Every culture has a mythos that it mostly follows. We're in a culture that is the culture of John Wayne. We have a Puritan culture here. We have a culture where if you work hard and don't show your emotions, then everything will be okay. And a lot of us, even if we think we're not part of that culture, we have a lot of it deeply ingrained in our psyche. And so there's a lot of what I call trauma locks. I created a distinction between healthy fear and unhealthy fear. And the unhealthy fear is the trauma locks. We get into fight, flight, freeze, or disassociation. It's a nervous system response that's in our body that locks us down. And in future sessions, we can talk more about that. But the healthy fear is when we get the butterflies in our stomach and we get excited about the challenge that's in front of us. So one of the reasons why people don't talk about fear is simply they don't have the vocabulary to talk about it, right? And this is what I do in my intimacy labs. This is what I do in the human connection circles. I teach people the language of how to speak. It's not that people don't want to talk about their fears. They simply never had the vocabulary to do it.
So, can you explain that just a little bit further around what are some of the vocabulary, or just maybe a couple things that words that you can use that can help out with that?
Well, this is where it gets into more depth and hits the elephant in the room about culture and gender and so forth. Like, I know in the culture of men, one of the biggest taboo words is fear. To say the F word. I'm afraid. When the guy is saying, I'm concerned, I'm not sure about that. These are all code for I'm freaking terrified. Because there's no word or language or vocabulary in the culture of men to say I'm afraid. Right? Without challenging their masculinity, which is horrible, right? So it's about a retraining within our psyche, within our culture, to own the fact that you can still be masculine and still say, I'm afraid. And from your gut, from your belly, I'm nervous, I'm afraid, I don't know about that. I really don't. And be sincere about it. It's less about the words, more about the feeling and making sure the other person feels that. And own the fact that there are trauma locks along the way. And I have a whole technology I developed from creating alchemy from unhealthy fear to healthy fear. So okay.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. And so in our last few minutes, I wanted to get to the third pillar of intimacy, or I get the third thing that we were going to talk about. So it's in our last few minutes. Could you talk about that? I'm really curious to know.
Well, one of the reasons why, as we talked about earlier, why pacing is so challenging is because usually we get either seduced by talking only about our desires or only about our fears, and we don't draw a full picture about who we are. But the more of an accounting that we can express to people in front of us about our longings and our fears, the more easy it is for us to be a representative of our pacing, right? So because the pacing is basically the ambassador to our fears and to our longings, that lets people know if we're a right fit, if we're a right harmonic space with one another. So if I talked about my desires and I never talked about my fears, how can I possibly set the pacing with you? Because you don't know what I'm afraid of, you see? Or if I just talked about my nervousness and my fear and I never told you about my desires, how do you possibly know how to make a stand for me? And how do I even know how to make a stand for myself? Which is why we all have to do our internal accounting about our desires and our fears. And I have another technology called the personal why that gets you to figure out what your core mission in life is. Because if you don't know that, you really don't know how to express your desires or your fears.
I'm curious how some of this would actually look conversationally. Somebody talking about their desires and their fears. I know people do it anyway to some degree, but I'm kind of getting a sense that what you're talking about could have a little more structure, or maybe it's a little more sophisticated.
I can tell you right now, like, my desire is to really get to know both of you and to learn from you, right? My fear is that I'll put my foot in my mouth because I feel like I don't know if I say queer culture, if that's okay. There's like 4 letters that I have to remember each time. I don't even know what all of them mean. I feel like I'm stepping into a different country that I don't know the rules of. And so while there's things that I know about, that I have a longing to bring dating to the queer culture, I don't even know if saying queer culture is okay. I don't know, what I can and can't say. And I'm sure that our listeners might have similar things around for like how do queer culture and straight people relate to one another? How do we go across a cultural divide, if there is one? I think there is one. I've seen that. I feel apprehensions around that. And the more I can voice out the fact that I'm afraid of that, the more we can partner with one another about what I'm afraid of, right? What I've just done is I've expressed my longing, my desire. I'm longing to learn from you. I've also shared the fact that I'm afraid that I will say something wrong because I don't know about that. Already that creates that invitation. Can you feel that? To communicate with one another. And if you do the same, all of a sudden now we have intimate contact. And then we get to set that.
Beautiful. Wow. So now what we're going to do really briefly is we're going to go around really quick, and we're going to say what we've taken away from this experience, what moved us, and also what we've learned and what we would add and what we would subtract. So I'll start, and I'll say that I was really moved in a lot of different ways. I was moved in just how to interact with people, and how I do it a lot is really great. and what I would I think it went really well, and I don't think I would change anything actually. So
let's see, what moved me? What moved me was the palpable thickness that I felt in the space of when we talked with one another. I felt a kind of tangible vulnerability and love in the room, of innocence meeting innocence, of us truly wanting to find something out that's a mystery, like we're going into an adventure together. That really moved me. There's no other place I'd want to be in the world than be in that space with other people. So that was something that moved me. What did I learn? I learned once again that no matter what differences I think of other people, that underneath it all, we're all human. We're all in this struggle together of trying to figure it all out. And the more we can align with one another about that, the more bridges of empathy and understanding that we can have with each other.
Let's see, what moved me? I think what moved me was just the sheer sincerity of all of us in the room, and watching these 2 men here with me, really just being so connected to their emotions and their life experience, and talking about a lot of that, their experiences. What I learned about some useful tips to take away with me, for not just for dating, but just for connecting with people. And what I would add or subtract, I think it's a little similar to what Tahil said. At least for myself, I could see myself just maybe just getting more collected and meditative beforehand, and having a clearer intention for what I'd like to communicate or get across in the show.
Realms Radio, where spirit rocks. Welcome to the conversation, You're listening to the Revolutionary Romance After Show.
So, Tahil, what is our homework? What is the homework that me and Lizzie get to work on with intimacy?
Okay, well, that's easy. Assessing everything that we just talked about, honoring your own pacing, your desire, your longings, your desires and fears, right? You get to be the arbiter of your truth and your pacing, okay? So what would be your next step around intimacy? Like, what's your next step? Yeah.
What is my next step around intimacy? So, well, I feel like there's a lot. Oh gosh, great. So I'm supposed to start with what makes my palms sweat and my heartbeat pound. Okay, so what? Well, honestly, what that would be to maybe ask someone out on a date. Is that? I don't know if that has to do with intimacy. I don't feel like it does, because I think what would maybe get me going a little bit is sharing my fear with someone I'm interested in. Sharing my fears with someone I'm interested in. I can feel my whole being kind of close up and like I don't want to do it, and my desires too.
Great. Yeah, that part where you felt afraid is where you want to go. It part of getting into more intimacy in your life is basically like following the path of terror. Okay? And it's about going where you're afraid to go and saying, I'm going to do it anyway. Okay? And so in the beginning, it's going to feel like you're trying to move a Mack truck that's standing in front of you. But for those of you in the audience that are not seeing Gabriel at this moment, his face has just turned red. He looks like he's going through a cathartic emotional release at the moment. And this is the beginning of change. This is where I see actual shifts happen in people when they confront themselves about the thing that they know they want to do, secretly want to do, but never really give themselves permission to do. And here's a coach sitting in front of them saying, yeah, so that's the thing that I not only give you permission to do, but I encourage you to do it strongly. And then there's this whole thing that happens, like it's a tangible physical body thing where he's like go whoo and oh my God, and all these things going through him. He's raising his hand.
What did I sign up for? I don't know. I'm excited. I'm also, wow. To be honest, the thought of expressing my feelings towards this person. There's someone who works at Cafe Gratitude. You both know that I'm interested in, and I've been just like a little high schooler with it. I've been like, Lizzie's nodding her head. She's heard all about it. And yeah, the thought of me going up to this person and sharing my desires and fears is scary as hell. It's scary as hell. And so my homework is to just do it? Is that what my homework is?
Yes, it's taking that breath and presenting that, like presenting your longing, presenting your fears, and also engaging with him so that he also shares his desires. And how you give people permission to do that is by modeling it for them. Right? You just like model for the person in front of you, and you don't start from 0 to 60 when you meet someone. Right? This is remember the lessons and review our show today. because of the pacing that we talked about earlier. Engage the intimacy dance first. Do that back and forth until you find that pregnant pause. And then when you get there, then take that gulp, that deep breath, and then see who engages the conversation first in terms of taking it to the next step. If it is you, then you still have to confront that Mack truck that sits in front of you and take the step, take the leap. Now, what makes it vulnerable is that he might say no, or he might say, I'm not interested. And you have to take a deep breath and know that that's a possibility. That's why intimacy is so dangerous. It's never a secure thing. And by the way, that happens whether you're just meeting somebody for the first time or if you've been with them for 20, 30 years. I tell you something that most single people don't get is that in relationships, when people have been married like 10, 15 years or something like that, you know what they want to reclaim back? That feeling, that butterfly in the stomach that you're feeling now when you're meeting that person for the first time. So relish this moment instead of trying to run away from it, because when you do get into a relationship, you're going to be longing for this moment of terror that you're feeling. Because
that makes a lot of sense to me, because that, I feel, would keep relationships exciting. It keeps them exciting and alive and kind of like I feel now about this person who I don't really even know, but it's exciting. It's exciting to me because it gets my adrenaline going, as Tahil just mentioned, and it gets me really nervous, and which makes me feel alive. And so then, for me, then I think my next step might actually just be to engage in the intimacy dance with him, because I'm not at the place to just sit. I've barely had any conversations with him.
Okay. And so, in that in mind, I wouldn't just do the intimacy dance with him. It would be I want you to practice intimacy dance with many people, not just him. Because an intimacy dance is just the practice of intimacy. Complete strangers. You can work your way up to it. What number would you say is a comfortable number for your pacing between now and the next time we meet?
How many people am I going to engage the intimacy dance with? Well, do these have to be people that I am interested in? Or is it just more about like practicing the intimacy dance? Because I feel like I can do that really well.
If somebody is interested in you, it's honoring the intimacy dance to check out to see if it feels comfortable. Right? And it's also about keeping your eyes open to see who you're interested in and engaging in intimacy dance as well. Most of us are blind to who we are attracted to, and we walk around with our heads stuck in a screen. And I did a whole workshop for young professionals, and one of the biggest things that I told them is that we bond with technology, so much so that we actually have phantom rings. Like we actually feel when an email comes, or we can actually feel when the ring comes, but we can't feel when somebody's actually checking us out. So one of the biggest things that I encourage you to do is that when you're hanging out with me or Lizzie, have us be your partnership and support, especially with other friends of yours. When somebody's checking you out, be aware of that and engage. And lift your head up off the screen, look around the room when you're in a place, and check out if anybody stands out for you. And actually approach that person and engage in the intimacy dance. So now that I've said that, how many people are you comfortable in doing so that when we come back here we can discuss that?
I think I could do it with one person.
I encourage you to challenge yourself a little more.
Okay. Well, the thing is, I'm going on vacation to Minnesota, so I won't have a lot of in which I won't really have a ride to get around to places. I'll be at home a lot talking with my aunt, which is be great and love it. So that's part of the reason that I said that was because it's really just in the next week.
We literally meet hundreds of people in a week. It's not that I'm purposely trying not to have you get off the hook, but the thing is that if you win, you lose. So I'm just trying to get you to commit. Like, look, we meet literally hundreds of people everywhere we go. And your only job is to just take notice. You know, I guarantee you that, I guarantee you that within a week, you're going to meet hundreds of people. Just because of the numbers game, there's going to be at least a half a dozen people that you will meet that are going to be interested in you, that are going to be checking you out. And I guarantee you that throughout all those hundreds of people, there's going to be at least one or two people that you're going to be interested in. Yes. Because it's not about, all you honor in an intimacy dance is who is standing out for you. You understand? Got it. And later you can talk about, you're going to be in this space because who you're checking out is going to be more likely to be more along what I call your species. But until then, you're just playing the intimacy dance.
Okay. So, wow. Okay, that puts it in a whole new perspective for me. I was thinking I was having to walk up to every single person I'm attracted to and share myself with them. But I think for me, I can for sure. I think what feels comfortable for me right now is I can definitely say I can do that with 5 people. That feels like a little bit of a stretch, but not really. That feels doable. Yeah, so I can commit to doing that with 5 people, or engaging if someone initiates that with me, engaging with them in that. So. Let me clarify one thing. Do we gotta get to the uncomfortable pause part, or is it just dancing with them?
If you don't get to a point of that pregnant pause together, chances are, for whatever reason, there is not you or the other person is not engaging. There will always be a pregnant pause in an intimacy dance if each person is upping the ante with one another. That pregnant pause is a cue that there's an opportunity for you to take it further to something, whether it be a stronger kinship together or an actual date of a romantic nature. But that's what you're looking for in that intimacy dance. That's what you're experimenting with.
So, am I also responsible for, during those moments when I feel the pregnant pause, to initiate something? Or what is my assignment for that part of the 5 people that I'm going to meet?
I'm glad you asked me this question, because in those moments of pregnant pauses, sometimes it feels like centuries. And in the culture that we live in, we are taught to avoid those pregnant pauses like it was the plague, right? Those pregnant pauses are very sacred moments in time that we feel authentic kinship as human beings to one another. And, how often have you felt silence with someone and felt like you had an urge to fill that space up with some kind of banter that, just filled up the space? So, right. So, in that moment, there's a fear. That pregnant pause, for most of our culture, has set up, it doesn't feel secure, the pregnant pause. There's something about it that feels, you're either going to have a trauma lock where you want to run away from the room, or you want to talk incessantly, which is like that fight or flight, or are you going to freeze up and you feel like you can't find the words, which is what you translating your, I feel like a teenager or a school kid or something like that, right? That's a trauma lock of freezing. You understand? Or you check out where you're not even there, like a disassociation. Those are there's unhealthy fear. In that moment, you have an opportunity to create alchemy to a healthy fear where you feel the excitement, the joy of the challenge that's in front of you, of the mystery of an opportunity to discover another soul that's sitting in front of you. And really get clear on that. That's what makes it sacred. That's the practice.
So, with the intimacy dance, when I get to that part, the pregnant pause part, if let's say on my mind is, wow, I would like to ask this person out for coffee, or whatever it is, are you suggesting that is when I say that? Or are you suggesting that is when I say my fears and my desires?
The fears and desires are discussed in the intimacy dance itself. That's how you reveal yourself. More subtly, but how you reveal yourself is your good points and your challenging points. In the pregnant pause, now we're entering into right timing. Whatever makes you feel at ease in the uncomfortable. Whoever drops into ease in the uncomfortable first is going to guide the show in the pregnancy of the pause that initiates the first contact. By right of divine providence in that moment, that person is the guide. And you become the receiver. Or vice versa. It is not by thought or set formula. It is by spiritual right in that moment of who drops into uncomfortable space first and is okay with it. That auto-selection, by its very natural selective nature, chooses who leads and who follows in that moment.
This all makes so much sense to me. And I have to say that it really triggers me. And I'm totally willing to go out on a limb and do something I'm afraid of. There's a part of me, though, that's wondering why is what you're saying, which I know is true, and like on the outside, in my mind, it sounds really simple. Like, well, of course, that's easy. Like, it's not that difficult. But I'm analyzing within myself, why do I get so tense and so triggered and so scared around revealing myself in that way and just being in a connection with another human? I don't know what you have to say about that, but I just thought I would bring it up.
Well, first, I just want to commend you on the courage to reveal that, because most people don't share that, their inner angst or contraction. By a very it's understanding trauma. By the very definition of trauma creates an experience of the situation that's greater than it really is. It augments an urgency and emergency experience which doesn't warrant one. A trauma is a residue of an extreme situation that happened in the past that we didn't have permission, because of the culture we live in, for some reason or another, to be expressed. So when the dots line up, which is usually in those pregnant pauses of moments in time with other human beings, the trauma gets released and doesn't allow us to accurately function naturally in that particular moment. So we're a trauma nation. I'd say most of my work is untying knots in people's unhealthy fear to create an excitement again around the challenge that's in front of them. So it makes sense. It's unfortunately natural in our culture to experience trauma and some kind of lockdown. As I said earlier, I came up with a technology called structuring for success when something is not working. And trauma also by definition makes you unconscious of the experience. So whatever your favorite trauma lock experience is, set up a structure that despite yourself, you end up becoming more conscious in the process. So for example, my favorite trauma lock is to fight, get aggressive when something's not working. I challenge the situation, okay, instead of being conscious and present to it. So I've developed a structure for success that despite myself, I will get more grounded and more present. So what I've done is that whenever I feel like I'm challenging someone and this creates a certain kind of situation, I take a deep breath and I set up a way to this inner dialogue that everything's going to be okay. Yeah. Right?
I think sometimes it really is that simple. Just telling yourself you're going to be okay. Like, we're safe now. It's okay. We're going to be just fine, actually. There's no one who's abusive, or there's no one, like, this is just happening right to me right now. Okay. That helps me. That helps me to feel a little bit more open, well, a lot more open, actually, to fully implementing what you're saying in a way that empowers my life and yeah.
And also giving yourself permission to make mistakes. What I found is that the irony is that the likelihood of you actually making mistakes goes down if you honor the fact that you will make some. Allow yourself to fumble, allow yourself to trip, allow yourself not to do it just right. And there's this ease that comes over you when you start doing that. There's no right or wrong way to do it. You just kind of do it. And that could be something that you can share. It's like, wow, like I really get triggered. And or something, it's like just reveal yourself, out the elephant in the room. Like, I'm really nervous right now, and you'll find yourself less nervous. I'm actually, as a straight man, I'm actually jealous of that in the queer culture, with gay men, because I find that most gay men have more permission to say that than I would as a straight man in the culture I live in. And I'm jealous. Really, because I can't, if I am as a straight man say I'm afraid or I'm expressing emotion, all of a sudden I get who I am as a straight man gets challenged, and I have to defend that with another man that I'm talking to, and it sucks. So I just want you to know what it looks like on this side of the fence. That's what it looks like.
Wow, thanks for that perspective. I hadn't thought about it that way. Okay. Well, I can commit to doing that with 5 people between now and the next time we're on the air. So I can definitely do that, and really committed to that, seeing where that takes me. I'd love to, me and Tahil have been talking for a little while, so I'd love to actually hear what Lizzie has to say. She's been so patient and just waiting so patiently for her turn to speak. So I'd love to hear what you think your homework might be, and maybe have a dialogue with Tahil about it.
Well, I think that some intimacy dancing is in order for me, for sure. And in addition to that, one thing that would be a good step for me, I think, would be to start to look into what queer events, or not even events, but just kind of get in on some of the resources in this area, or groups, or tantric meetups, but things that queer women will be at, that I can attend, or that I can engage or have conversations. It's really just not just scoping things out, but acting on what I find, and starting to build up a bit of a network for myself. So.
Yeah, one of the things that we actually had a session before this meeting, and we talked about a technology that I developed called personal why, like knowing your personal why as to why you're dating out there in the first place. And one of the things that we also discovered in that exploratory session was to also be okay with not knowing, to be in the adventure of the dating world as a exploration, and to be more straightforward about, like, wow, I'm really experimenting, I'm not committing at this point in time, I'm simply dating and getting to know people right now. So I would encourage you to have more of those conversations and literally come out that you are a dater, that you are dating, and that you're a single person. So, like, I would encourage you that when you go to a party, that when you go to these events that you're talking about, that you say, hi, I'm a single woman, and I'm dating right now, and I'm really looking for other women, to connect with. And just letting it out and coming out like on a bullhorn that you are single, and that you are available, and that you are dating, which will take some practice. So what are you committing to between now and next time we meet? Like, how many events are you planning to go to where you literally come out that you are a single person ready to date and are looking?
Okay. All right. I can commit to at least one event, because I don't know what is going to actually be happening in the next week. So I don't want to commit to, I know that at least one, I should be able to find at least one thing I can go to and say that. And saying that would be a big deal for me, because I've never introduced myself that way. So I think that would be a really good step in owning where I'm at, and starting to actually attract more opportunities for intimacy dance. Yeah. So I can commit to at least one, and can I get bonus points if I do more than one?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Not only do you get bonus points, but you can actually have more one-on-one conversations with people and say, look, I'm single, I'm dating right now, and actually start conversations as a topic that way, and just really get to let the world it's like you're making a stand inside yourself to come out. Have you come out as a lesbian so far?
Yes. Yes, I did. I came out when I was 16. I came out that was when I figured it out myself, and then I told everyone. It was well, actually, I didn't tell everyone right away, but not too long after that, I guess it's kind of a long story, but I'll try to make it short. I had a very, very Catholic, conservative family growing up, and I was going to this Catholic private college prep high school, and after I figured out that I was bi, I started I said bi at the time, and I realized later that I was a lesbian, but after I figured that out, I started hanging out with a really different group of friends. It was kind of more like the outcasts of my school, but I also felt a lot happier in some ways. And at that time, I started to dress in all black, and I was gothic, and I was just trying out that whole world. So I was rebelling against everything, pretty much, and told my parents I wasn't going to go to church anymore, and told them not too long after that I liked women. And after that, my mother just wouldn't really let me be alone in a room with any of my friends, because she didn't know who I was going to be trying to make out with, apparently. And she also was really insistent on having conversations with me where she would just be trying to convince me of the ways of the Catholic Church and would inform me about how homosexuality is a disorder, and she would give me all these books about healing my sexuality and or becoming chaste or something like that. So apparently those were the options, were to become chaste and not have sex, to kind of take on a religious life instead, or to somehow convert myself. So at that time I was going through dealing with all of that, but I also was really committed to just saying things like they were and just saying who I was, because when I realized that I liked women, I realized how much of my life and how much I presented to myself wasn't even really me, and how much I told my parents that wasn't, it just wasn't true about me at all. And so that was getting frustrating, and I realized that I had to lie about almost everywhere I went, because my parents had so many rules about where I could go and what I could do, and I was just tired of putting on all the lies and the facade. So I realized that even though they might try to do things, I remember being afraid that they would threaten to take away my car or different things like that, which none of those came to fruition, but they were definitely, my parents were definitely playing with those ideas. But I found a lot more freedom by just saying what was going on for me, and I think that train has been running ever since. Because I was able to tell my parents that I was gay, it hasn't really been an issue to tell anyone else, at least on a surface level. But I think it still is very much a thing on an emotional level, and just on more subtle levels where I'm just nervous to express really just attraction towards other women or things of that nature.
Oh, honey. I hear so much behind those words, and I just want to say to the audience, when you're hearing us talk, don't just listen to the words. Take some deep breaths, which will allow you to hear deeper behind the words, the feelings, and the person that's speaking, and there's obviously some trauma locks. I'm guessing. I don't want to say obvious. I'm guessing there's some trauma locks are coming out, right? You're laughing right now, but that's...
The last year or so has been amazing as far as getting in touch with these trauma locks and emotions. A lot of it really directly through the work at my massage school, where one of the things that the founder of the school specializes in is dealing with trauma that affects people from the time they were born, birth trauma. So, but it's, in practice, it can be a little challenging. I just said a lot of words, and it's a whole different thing to be in touch with the emotions of it.
Yeah, it's a practice and it's a muscle. But the first thing is to just own the fact that it does happen. Trauma locks do happen. We do check out. We do feel like we want to run away from the room. We do feel like we want to be aggressive with something when we're feeling challenged. Just watching the cues, being aware of it as much as we can, and enlisting the people around us to support us in that process, and just being out about the fact that people have trauma. Having said that, taking deep breath and being courageous despite that, and sharing with the world, coming out. In this particular case, coming out that you're single. I am single. And the first couple of times you're going to feel kind of nervous and you might experience some apprehension. But by the third or fourth time, there will be a muscle that develops and you will actually start to feel excited about the process. And the moment the alchemy shifts and you actually start getting excited about sharing the fact that you're single, something will shift in you. And you will start being more charismatic towards getting that in your life. Because there is a potency and a power to speaking the magic of actually speaking what you want in the world. That's the power of coming out.
yeah, I can sense the power in what you're saying. I'm kind of curious though, as far as saying that I'm single. Would this come up in a conversation where I'm starting to engage in the intimacy dance, or are you saying more maybe to bring that up more in situations where I'm meeting a new group, or I'm around possibly a responsive crowd, or
Yeah, you gauge the situation, but some of the most successful flirts that I know, and by the way, yeah, this is something that we can actually have as a topic one day in a show. It's letting people know that you're single. Like flirts that are really successful in having a lot of dates tend to let people know within like 5 minutes if they're single or not in a connection. Like they work that in. And there's always this kind of tension between people. Like if you've ever noticed single people meeting, like people are always kind of like, there's the first moment in time where you let somebody know that you have a girlfriend, or you have a boyfriend. Why it feels so heavy in that conversation, or there's a pause, because until people know if you're single or if you're attached, because in the culture that's monogamous based, not alternative relationship based, that's something that people look to hunt for as an information bit to see if you're available or not. And so it's letting people know, like, I'm in a relationship, I'm single, to see if there's a possibility for a romantic connection. And there will always be a little like butterfly in your stomach when you say it. But let's see, I'm thinking of an example of how I did it.
What about for somebody who ends up in the situation of, not really the situation, but they decide they want to be dating multiple people? So would you recommend saying, I'm in a relationship and I'm exploring polyamory? Or I wonder how not a lot of people are even open to that. Actually, something like that, would you recommend that I or someone listening just kind of owns it with random strangers even, or that they say it to somebody who seems like they'd be open to it?
I just would actually like to clarify your question. Are you wondering about just while you're dating, or are you wondering about while you're in a relationship and dating? Because you said both, and I wasn't sure what you meant. So can you clarify that, please? If it's just dating, like just while you're dating, or if you're in a relationship and want to date.
I was asking it more for if somebody's in a relationship and wants to date, but that's a good point, because it could apply to either.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from you is that you're already in your head. This is the way the mind works. It's you're already thinking, well, it's one of the things. It's one of your core values. Like what I'm guessing from you is that when you do get into a relationship, what you're looking for in the dating world is people who are also interested not just in monogamy, but in alternative relating structures. Am I guessing correctly?
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. So because I used to hold poly support groups and alternative relationship support groups, it's another coming out. Every time that you out yourself about something that is not cultural norm, it's a coming out. And coming out has its own anatomy, its own language. If there's not a culture, if the majority of the culture doesn't understand it, there's going to be a response that usually has you be more apprehensive about sharing it, usually gauging the situation if it's okay, a kind of ownership of the fact that if you share it with the wrong company, that you might have some negative reactions or trigger people with emotional content that gets their ire up, that gets their trauma points up. So there's a kind of like my greatest wish for people who are part of an alternative culture, whether it be poly, whether it be gay, whether it be spiritual, whether it be whatever closet you're coming out of, that you stay sensitive, innocent, and courageous through the process without getting numb, right? And I wish somebody told me this when I was going through all this stuff. And this is one of the reasons why I think we all have a show here, is because you're not alone. That there is a way for you to get supported through this process and still maintain your innocence and your childlike wonder while facing this diversity. I think this is one of the longings for why we want to click to a group that gets us in the way that we are coming out. Not all of us have that opportunity. But we can all relate as human beings that no matter who you're in front of, at some point, somewhere, they need to come out of something. Because the dark joke of it all is that we all as human beings need to come out. But we think the other person does not. And when you can get that, you can really create those bridges of empathy and understanding in front of one another. So you've just did a multi-layer of coming out. I recommend you come out one step at a time. Build up your muscle.
Keep working on my pacing.
Right, like one step at a time. You don't start with step 400. You start with step 1 and you work your way up. You don't start with 1,000 pounds. You start out with 5 pounds and you work your way up. First, just practice saying, I am single.
Yeah, that sounds great. I wasn't planning on going further than that this week, but I couldn't help but think ahead.
That part about couldn't help but think ahead is what typically gets us into trouble in the dating world. We're already thinking about how we're going to marry this person that's sitting in front of us on a first date, and then we're wondering why the first date isn't going so well, right? Just like the Zen culture, like if you're doing the dishes, you're just doing the dishes. If you're just coming out of the fact that you're single and that you're ready to date to the world, you just share with the world, I am single. There's a reason why we have the homework one step at a time. Do your steps. And in incremental pacing, I promise you, before you know it, you'll be exactly where you want to be.
That sounds awesome. Thanks for putting that in perspective. It's really helpful.
You're very welcome.
Wow, and there you have it. Right here on Realms Radio. Maybe we should just call it Realms Living Room. Living Room of the Realms. Wow, well that was really great to listen to. I learned a lot. And I learned I could have been writing all this down. I learned that I, on first dates, do think that I'm going to marry the person and totally get myself into a fantasy that takes me out of being present. And I've learned that there are gray areas. It's not this isn't so black and white like I was, even though I intellectually knew that wasn't true. That's just what I did. But I'm starting to really integrate. I feel that just isn't true, or it's just not how I want to be living. And so I'm really excited to go on a first date and to just be on a first date and not be marrying the person already.
What a concept. See, this is how dating can become fun. I'm starting to realize from your shares, is that this is one of the reasons why people hate dating so much, is because they're already on the relationship part, or they're focusing on the past, which is their longings and hungers, and they're not really enjoying the date for what it is, which is the joy of getting to know another human being, and the joy of actually sharing yourself with another human being, where they get to find out about who you are. Imagine dating as an actually extended version of that intimacy dance that you started when you first got together with that person, and how each date is simply upping the ante of intimacy, where you start out with that first little core niblet of a complete stranger about talking about the weather, and eventually that ping pong back and forth of like upping the ante turns into a pregnant pause, and it warrants the courage of someone to say, hey, let's go on that first date. And then you're on that first date and you're ping ponging back and forth, and hey, that first date maturates into a courageous jump of a leap of faith into another date, and then another date after that. And that intimacy dance might last for a couple of months, and it becomes what it is. Or that intimacy dance might last a couple of years and might become what it is. Or that intimacy dance might last for the rest of your life, and it becomes for what it is. But if you're not projecting, but actually staying present to the dance itself, it lets you know what kind of connection you're actually having or not.
Wow, there's like an audio book being created right here. We need to take all these little segments and put them together. It's really enlightening for me, I can say, just to hear all this information and then think about, wow, how could I apply that in my everyday life? and what does that look like? What does it look like when I authentically share myself with another human being that I don't know very well? Well, I'm really scared to start off with. I can start off with just saying that because it's true most of the time. So, I'm definitely inspired and excited to venture forth into the dark forest of dating.
Can I just say that it's also an enchanted forest of dating, and that I want to remind people in the audience that we walk around with all these guards and all these protective spaces around our heart and our vulnerability, but I want to let you know that you can die secure and feel safe without ever getting to know anybody. Right? And so there's a way that my stand is that you somewhere along the line find the courage to dip a toe out into the world and start connecting with people. Because nowadays, the reports are coming back with technology now. We have more ways to connect than ever with people. And the reports keep coming back that we're feeling more and more lonely and isolated as a culture. And there has to be some kind of change in how that's occurring. We are losing touch about how to connect eyeball to eyeball, belly to belly, human to human contact. It's so easy to create an image of yourself online, through texting, through so many other media other than actual human to human interaction. So please be courageous about that, and remember that at some point outside of your family, some of the closest and intimate people that you know in your life were at one point a complete stranger.
Yes. Aho. Amen, Ashe, and so it is. Well, we've had such a great time talking about ourselves and about our relationships and about how we can really start to implement something that is ultimately more aligned for ourselves. And Tahil wants to say something.
I don't want to be left out of this equation because I'm here also to learn about myself and how to be more welcoming to the queer culture. Because the thing you have to understand about me is that I have been on a path I was lucky enough and blessed enough to make a living around the things that I'm deeply curious about. And I've always set up these labs as a way of learning about myself and the world around me. And I'm taken on the path of understanding the queer culture because I happen to be running a connection circle right now in a yoga studio that has a large queer following. And one of the reasons why I'm doing this radio show, aside from supporting you guys and supporting the world out there, is for me to become more understanding and more welcoming to a culture that I don't understand because I'm a straight man. So I would like some homework from you guys, right? About being more welcoming and being more honoring of the queer culture. So please educate and think a little bit about what I can do to become more insightful about that.
Well, I just want to start off by saying there's probably a lot of things that you could do. And, of course, connecting with other queer people or something like that might be great. To be honest with you, what came up for me, which is a little bit strange, but might be some fun homework, there's this really great film. It's on Netflix, if you have Netflix. It's on like live streaming on Netflix. And the title is a little bit shocking, but it was actually really good and really enlightening. And it's called Gay Sex in the 70s. And I somehow ended up watching this film and was kind of blown away to the fact that especially our city of San Francisco right here has so much history. So much history that I didn't, as a gay man, I didn't even know. I didn't even know what it was like. It was a different world. Like, way different. And I would encourage anyone to watch it because it was the pre-AIDS culture, the pre-AIDS gay culture, and then AIDS came and kind of really took it down. I feel, and so it's really a fascinating documentary on what gay men specifically. Gay men were like, and how they kind of ruled the city and owned it, and yeah, I highly recommend it. It's a really well done film. So maybe that could be some homework for you.
So if I understand it correctly, that film allows me to get a deeper understanding of the struggle that gay culture has gone through, especially gay men in San Francisco, to help me have a deeper understanding of the history so I can... Okay, great. I love that. Awesome. Shall do. And I do have Netflix, so it's perfect. I would love for you to be the representative of the lesbian culture. And so, and something that I can learn about, because it's different, right? And I want to be, have bilingual in the process. Okay.
That makes complete sense. Let's see what I can think of.
So one thing that came to me was, I think it might be great for you to maybe like hang out with a lesbian couple for a day and just talk to them, get in their world, go to places they go to, just kind of like somehow get in their world. And I think that might give you a lot of perspective on what they live, and maybe you can interview them and talk to them about their challenges and what they went through, and what just ask all the inquisitive questions that you usually ask. That's one thing that came to me that you could probably easily do, and I definitely have connections if that's something that you want to do. So, just food for thought.
Yeah, that sounds great. I actually do have some a lesbian couple that are also my friends, and I have talked to them in the past. But I would love to meet another lesbian couple so I can broaden my horizons, and just take on the challenge of figuring that out. And share with the show about what I'm discovering, because I'm guessing that we're doing something that's a new paradigm here, and we're discovering about one another in this. So, yeah, great. Can't wait. Wonderful.
Well, Yes, we will definitely see how that goes down. Thanks to Tahil for taking on double homework. You have a lot of homework.
Gabe, before you wrap up, I'm really curious. Have you explored the other side of the fence, as Lizzie would put it?
Well, I haven't. And there's definitely a part of me that's curious about that, and that is really open to exploring something there. And again, I don't really... I shouldn't say again, because I never said that, but I feel like I say this a lot when I talk about it, is that I've never... I can count on one hand the amount of times I've been physically attracted to a woman. I've definitely have noticed women who are beautiful and thought, wow, they are so beautiful. I love their curves and they're gorgeous. But there's only been a couple times where I've been physically attracted, like like wanting to explore things. And so yeah, I haven't really explored that because it hasn't really come up for me very much. The times it has, I've been really curious about, but yeah. So yeah, I haven't fully explored that, but I'm open to it.
I'm sure there's going to be future sessions, but I'm so curious if the exploration of that challenges your gay card as much as it challenges the straight man's card for exploring with the same sex. And
well, actually, it's always been a dream of mine to be bisexual. I've always wanted to be bisexual, actually, because I thought it was so cool. And I was like, wow, wouldn't that be awesome if I was attracted to everyone? Like, I would have so many options. Like, well, today I feel like... So, I really would want that if that were the case. I don't know. I really don't think it is for me. And I'm, like I said, I'm really open if that is. But I've tried. I haven't tried quite as hard as you have, Lizzie, but I know Lizzie's stories, but I also, I haven't been compelled in that way. So yes, like I'm really open to that if that wants to happen. It just hasn't, and I've kind of just surrendered to that for the moment. But if something in the future opens up where that is presenting itself, and I get really excited about someone who's a woman, hey, sure, I'm not committed. Well, what I am committed to is constantly being open in all areas of my life, and so that includes my sexuality, which is why I always wanted to be bisexual, because part of me just wants to experience what the feeling is like to be with a woman. But at the same time, I also know I'm not turned on by that. So it's like, well, okay, but it's more of just like a curiosity, like what do all the straight men experience? I don't know.
Yeah, it becomes the forbidden fruit. It's the unknown. And I wonder how many gay men actually have the courage to say that they were curious. And, and how many straight men would have the courage to say they were curious? So again, another time.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, gosh, it's been such a great other hour here with the revolutionary romance after show, I guess we'll call it, and just candidly discussing about where we're at and what we're doing, and just kind of having a free flow conversation based on the topic that was in our show, which you can listen to on realmsradio.net, called Revolutionary Romance, in which we talked about intimacy. So we will definitely be back, of course. This is just the start of a long and beautiful and transformational conversation about love and how it applies to your life, and whether you're a straight man or straight woman, a gay man or a gay woman, as long as you're a person, what we're talking about here is relevant for you in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just gaining a different perspective on how other people love and what issues come up with them. So we're looking forward to many more conversations. We've had a beautiful time today.
See you next month.
Realms Radio, where spirit rocks.